December 7th, 1941. A day that would forever alter the course of history. A date etched in history, remembered for the devastation and the heroism that followed. A day that lives in infamy, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt so poignantly declared in his speech to the nation. The calm Sunday morning in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was shattered by the sudden roar of aircraft engines and the deafening blasts of bombs. Japanese planes filled the sky, their mission clear and deadly. Explosions ripped through battleships, sending plumes of smoke and fire into the air. Smoke billowed, painting the blue sky black. The serene harbor was transformed into a scene of chaos and destruction. America was at war. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor shocked the nation, leaving Americans in disbelief and sorrow. The images of burning ships and wounded sailors filled newspapers and newsreels, bringing the harsh reality of war into American homes. The attack was a calculated gamble by Japan, meticulously planned and executed with precision. They sought to cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet, hoping to prevent American interference in their expansionist ambitions. They aimed to secure their dominance in Asia, believing that a weakened America would be unable to respond effectively. However, the attack had the opposite effect. Instead of demoralizing the American people, it galvanized them. It ignited a firestorm of anger and patriotism across America, uniting the nation in a common cause. The nation, once hesitant about entering the war in Europe, was now resolute and determined. Congress swiftly declared war, and the American war machine began to mobilize. The Pacific War had begun, a conflict that would reshape the world and test the resolve of nations. The events of that fateful day would forever be remembered as a turning point in history. The seeds of conflict were sown long before Pearl Harbor. Japan, a nation with a rich history and culture, was undergoing a transformation. The early 20th century saw Japan rapidly modernizing and industrializing, driven by a desire to be recognized as a major world power. Japan, a rising power, harbored ambitions of empire. The military parades and the display of imperial flags were not just for show, they were a testament to Japan's growing military might and its aspirations for dominance. They sought to control resources and expand their influence across Asia. The industrial activities were geared towards supporting a war machine that would enable them to conquer and control vast territories. This brought them into conflict with the United States, a nation with its own interests in the Pacific. The American Pacific Fleet was a formidable force, and the U.S. was keen on maintaining its influence in the region. Throughout the 1930s, Japan's aggression grew. The invasion of Manchuria was just the beginning, a clear signal of Japan's intent to expand its territory by force if necessary. They invaded Manchuria, then China. The occupation of these regions was marked by brutal military campaigns and harsh control over the local populations. Their military machine, fueled by dreams of conquest, seemed unstoppable. Propaganda films of the time glorified the Japanese military, portraying them as invincible warriors destined to rule Asia. The United States, along with other nations, responded with sanctions. These economic measures were intended to curb Japan's aggressive expansion and force them to reconsider their actions. They hoped to pressure Japan into changing course. These efforts failed. Diplomatic meetings and international responses did little to deter Japan, which saw these actions as obstacles to their imperial ambitions. Japan felt cornered, its ambitions thwarted. The leadership believed that their nation's survival and prosperity depended on securing resources and territories, even if it meant going to war. They saw war with the United States as inevitable. Detailed war plans were drawn up, and military discussions focused on how to deliver a crippling blow to the American forces. They believed a swift, decisive strike could cripple America's will to fight. The meticulous planning and preparation for the attack on Pearl Harbor were seen as the key to achieving a quick and decisive victory. This belief led them to Pearl Harbor, a day that would change everything. The attack on December 7, 1941 was a turning point, plunging the United States into World War II and altering the course of history forever. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a gamble, a roll of the dice that backfired spectacularly. While Japan succeeded in inflicting heavy damage, they missed a crucial opportunity. They failed to destroy the American aircraft carriers, which were out at sea that day. This failure would prove to be a turning point. The carriers, symbols of American naval power, would become instruments of revenge. They would hunt the Japanese fleet across the vast Pacific. They would become beacons of hope in the darkest hours of the war. Japan's initial victories were swift and brutal. They captured Hong Kong, Singapore, and the Philippines. They seemed poised to achieve their goals. But the American spirit, once awakened, proved to be a formidable foe. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the tide began to turn. The Battle of Midway, a clash of carriers in the vast Pacific, became a decisive victory for the United States. American codebreakers cracked Japan's naval codes. They knew the time and location of the attack. The battle was a disaster for Japan. They lost 4 aircraft carriers, the backbone of their fleet. The victory at Midway shifted the balance of power. It marked the beginning of a long and bloody fight back by the United States. The courage and sacrifice of American sailors and airmen at Midway cannot be overstated. They faced overwhelming odds. They fought with unwavering determination. They turned the tide of war in the Pacific. Section 5, Island of Fire, Guadalcanal. The fight for Guadalcanal, a jungle-covered island in the Solomon Islands, became a brutal test of wills. For 6 months, from August 1942 to February 1943, American and Japanese forces clashed in a savage struggle for control. The fighting on Guadalcanal was some of the most brutal of the entire war. Marines battled intense heat, disease, and relentless Japanese attacks. The island became known as Iron Bottom Sound for the number of ships sunk offshore. Guadalcanal was a costly victory for the United States, but it proved to be a turning point. It broke Japan's offensive capabilities in the South Pacific. It set the stage for the long and bloody campaign of island hopping. Section 6, Leapfrogging to Victory. The island hopping campaign was a grueling strategy of attrition. American forces, under the command of General Douglas MacArthur and Admiral Chester Nimitz, bypassed heavily defended Japanese strongholds. They focused on capturing strategically important islands, cutting off Japanese supply lines, and establishing air bases. Each island, from Tarawa to Iwo Jima to Okinawa, was a battleground. Each victory came at a terrible cost. The Japanese fought with fanaticism, defending their positions to the death. They believed surrender was dishonorable. The island hopping campaign showcased the determination of American forces and the industrial might of the United States. It slowly choked Japan's ability to wage war. It brought the Allies closer to the Japanese mainland. Section 7, The Shadow of the Bomb. As the war neared its end, a new and terrifying weapon cast its shadow over the world. The atomic bomb, developed in secrecy by the United States, represented a terrifying leap in destructive power. The decision to use the bomb on Japan remains controversial to this day. Supporters argued it was necessary to end the war quickly and save lives. Critics argued it was a morally reprehensible act that ushered in the nuclear age. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, instantly killing tens of thousands of people. 3 days later, a second bomb devastated Nagasaki. The world watched in horror as the true extent of the bomb's power became clear. Section 8, Scars of War. The Pacific War left an indelible mark on all involved. Millions lay dead, both soldiers and civilians. Cities were reduced to rubble. The psychological scars of the conflict ran deep. In Japan, the war led to a profound sense of national trauma. The emperor, once considered divine, was forced to renounce his divinity. The country was occupied by American forces and underwent a process of demilitarization and democratization. In the United States, the war had a profound impact on society. It led to the rise of the United States as a global superpower. It also led to changes in civil rights as African American soldiers, who had fought for freedom abroad, demanded equal rights at home. Section 9, A Fragile Peace. The Pacific War officially ended on September 2, 1945, with Japan's formal surrender aboard the USS Missouri. This moment marked not just the end of a brutal conflict, but the beginning of a new chapter in world history. The world, weary of war, celebrated the dawn of a new era. Streets were filled with jubilant crowds, people from different nations rejoicing together, united by the hope for a peaceful future. The relationship between Japan and the United States, once bitter enemies, underwent a remarkable transformation. Diplomatic efforts and mutual understanding paved the way for a partnership that would shape the future of both nations. With American assistance, Japan rebuilt its economy and emerged as a major economic power. The Marshall Plan and other aid programs provided the necessary resources for Japan to recover and thrive. The two former enemies became close allies, bound by shared interests and a commitment to democracy. Joint military exercises and economic collaborations became symbols of their newfound alliance. The legacy of the Pacific War is complex and multifaceted. It is a tapestry woven with threads of heroism and horror, of strategic brilliance and devastating mistakes. It is a story of courage and sacrifice, of brutality and loss. Soldiers on both sides displayed immense bravery, while civilians endured unimaginable hardships. It is a reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and understanding in a world still grappling with the legacies of war. As we look back, we are reminded of the fragile nature of peace and the continuous effort required to maintain it.